Chapter 9. While they waited for Jabari and Gavi's decision, Issika helped Iba back into her clothes. She was seething inside as she arranged the long skirt and shirt on her sister. Jabari and Gavi were taking forever to talk with the birds, and Issika buzzed with impatience. She walked back to the large tree on the jungle line and tilted her head back to look at the branches above her head. The sun filtered down through the leaves of the strange snake-like tree, casting patterns of shadow on the ground and on her arms and hands. It would be an excellent tree to climb, she thought. She hadn't climbed a tree since she was very small, when they had first come out of the desert to the worker village. She hadn't known then that it was forbidden to climb trees. She clambered into the tempting yuchi tree with gray bark and wide branches near the kitchen garden. Her new father, Nirloth, punished her for it, but Issika's mother intervened quickly. He hadn't hit Issika more than twice. Everything had been easier when her mother was alive. Issika hadn't climbed a tree since. She sat and waited, watching Iba, who sat close to the water, patting piles of sand and smoothing them to form large, round domes. Issika thought of what Jabari had told them. All the children who had been sent out were alive. It was too incredible to believe. Issika had assumed the sent ones to be dead for so long, she found she couldn't believe him. It couldn't be true. She absent-mindedly drew in the sand, thinking hard about all of it. She blinked and looked at what she had drawn. One word. Arya. It was the name of the Lot's sister who had been given over, breaking Issika's mother's heart. Could Arya be alive? Issika blinked sudden tears out of her eyes. There was no use thinking about it. She knew from experience that hoping for things made disappointment more devastating. Arya was dead. With her own eyes, Issika had seen the boat tossed into the dangerous ocean. Beniyim was sitting a few feet away, dreaming it seemed, staring out at the sea, quiet as usual. Issika wished he was more talkative. She needed to talk this over with someone, and Ben was better than no one. She shifted and sighed. "We'll go anyway," she said loudly, filled with sudden conviction. She felt brave. She stretched her hands out in front of her to look at them and turned them over to look at her tingling palms. "Even if they won't take us," she continued, "we'll go after him anyway." Ben turned his head and met her eyes. He looked impossibly thin and tall, sitting there on the beach. She wondered briefly if she looked that way from a distance. He nodded slowly, and she knew he would come with her, if they had to go alone. She was pacing the length of the curved beach when she heard the long cry of the female bird, and turned to see Jabari and Gavi stepping out of the jungle, the Othra swirling around them. She ran back to the boys and waited breathlessly. Jabari frowned, but Gavi was smiling. "I don't know what the elders will think of this," Jabari said, sighing, "but the Othra have convinced us, and it seems that I am destined to push at the edges of what is allowed." He grinned, his face transformed. "We'll take you to Azaria, our royal city, to look for your brother." "We start this afternoon," Jabari said, after Issika and Iba had finished exclaiming over his words. He stood with one hand holding on to a branch that swung from the big tree. "For now, you should get some rest. You three look exhausted. It will be a long journey. The rescuers are ahead of us, and they'll travel quickly, with only one Poisonlander to guide. We won't be able to catch them before they get to the city." He reached up to the tree limb above his head and caught it with both hands, pulling his chin over the large branch 4 or 5 times before dropping lightly to the ground and walking away. Issika frowned. He was showing off, and he had said that they looked tired when Issika had more energy than she ever remembered having. And then she thought of something that nearly made her fall over. "Ben," she gasped, "their eyes! They haven't been shielding their eyes." Ben looked surprised, then laughed at her. "Have you only just realized that? They've been meeting our eyes all day." She had missed it. Why had she missed it? Was it because she had always strained against the rules? Or because she was sick with worry for Kital? but it was amazing, uncomfortable, breathtaking. A place where she could look into the eyes of anyone she chose. It was as unbelievable as the idea that all the sent ones were alive. After a moment, though, her excitement fizzled and she looked at her feet. She missed Kital, and there would be a long journey before she could hold him again. Hisaka tried to prepare, but there was almost nothing to do. She helped Iba roll her clothing into a pack to carry. She pulled the boat farther onto the shore, wishing she could return it to Jerutha's brother, or simply thank him. Her mind was disturbed, though, and she couldn't concentrate. She kept feeling a tugging on her mind like she was forgetting something. She had felt something similar before, faintly in the Losh forest near their home. Here it was stronger. The feeling grew, pulling on the edges of her consciousness, like something she should know or should be doing. She looked around, frustrated and puzzled. Gavi was fishing, throwing a net into the sea, waiting until he caught something, then pulling the shiny fish out of the water and dropping it into a basket at his feet. Jabari was packing a bag and seemed to be arguing with the birds. Benaim sat on the shore and stared out at the sea again. Every so often he turned and drew something in the sand with his finger. Iba sat beside Ben, singing. The feeling of pulling grew stronger and stronger. Isika closed her eyes and tried to push it out of her mind, but as soon as her sight was gone, the feeling was even more potent. A clear direction and shape came to her. It was the tree. The tree was calling to her. The tree was calling to her. It was the one with long snake-like branches, the one that had seemed like a good climbing tree. She opened her eyes and walked toward it. The pulling eased as she went, and the closer she got, the more she felt that going to the tree was the right thing to do. She put a hand on one of its branches and drew a sharp breath. The tree was buzzing. It hummed under her hand. She pulled her hand away but put it back when she realized it was almost painful to lose contact with it. The pulling came from its heights. Isika needed to climb into the upper branches. She picked up one foot and tried to put it on a limb, but her long, heavy skirt wouldn't allow her to stretch her leg very far. She paused. "It is not our way," she heard in her head, but then the humming of the tree brought tears to her eyes, and she grew angry with the voice in her head. She pulled her heavy overdress off until she wore only the shorts and light shirt that were her underclothes. Ignoring everyone else, paying attention only to the call of the tree, she climbed on to the first branch. She felt a burst of joy like light flowing through her body. The light inside grew brighter as she climbed, and her limbs grew stronger as she went higher. She climbed until she reached the branch that sparkled in the edges of her vision, and she heaved herself onto it. She closed her eyes and tried to quiet her racing heart. The humming of the tree filled Isika until she couldn't tell where she started and it stopped. It was more than the brilliant, joyful light behind her eyes. It was sound and motion inside her. Pictures began to flash through her mind, and she allowed them to draw her along a path of memory. Her father beating her for not gathering enough wood in the morning. Her father berating her for lack of reverence in the temple. Her mother's face as she lay on her bed, wasting away from grief. Isika's tears as she cared for Kital, the nights and mornings of walking with him. She saw herself exhausted and grieving, small and bent. She saw herself in the garden, her face wet with tears. She saw herself making the food. She saw herself as an old woman, though she was only a child. Jerutha coming, the tentative steps toward love for her stepmother, the way she might feel toward an older sister. Her father beating her when she screamed against his decision to give Kital over. The three of them running toward the boat, Benaim and Iba shadows behind her. Now she saw the birds flying overhead and spotting them, calling to Jabari. and the colors behind her eyes became wilder and wilder until she saw things that made no sense to her. A dark-skinned girl on a city street, a wall being torn down, a woman wailing, an old man with dark skin and a gentle face, a woman with a crown. Issika gasped and opened her eyes. Though she would have sworn she had been flying, she was still in the tree. She picked up one hand and stared at it. All her life she had been so tired. She was used to dragging herself out of bed in the morning, shuffling along hunched over. The sun usually seemed to beat her into the ground. In her heart, the weariness went even deeper. But now, as Issika opened and closed her hand, she felt great strength. She thought she could run to the city. She clambered down the tree and hopped up and down on her toes, reaching her hands over her head and trying to pull her chin over a branch the way Jabari had done. Oof, maybe not that strong. She looked up to see the birds watching her, clicking at each other in that way they had when they were talking only amongst themselves. The smallest of the three cocked her head to one side, and it seemed for a moment that she was looking straight through Issika. Issika shook her head to clear it. Things had become so strange. "Issika, do you want to start the fire?" Gavi called. She nodded, thankful there was some easy thing she could do, something familiar. When she walked away from the tree, she noticed that the feeling of being tugged had gone away completely. But the new strength didn't go anywhere. She straightened her shoulders and pulled her head up tall. She scooped a small pit into the sand next to Gavi, heaping the wood into a little pile the way she always did. Building a cooking fire was no different from what she would be doing at home. What was different was the sea whispering gently along the shore, sparkling with thousands of tiny flecks of sunlight. When she struck the flint, the fire bent obediently and flared up quickly, more quickly than she had ever been able to coax fire along. She sat back on her heels and looked at the little blaze, perplexed. She had just built a roaring fire in only a moment. That wasn't the usual way. What was this place? Gavi roasted the fish along with potatoes he buried in the coals. Ben and Iba and Issika ate most of the food. Issika could sense that Jabari and Gavi were holding back. She narrowed her eyes at them. "You should eat," she said. "Don't let us eat everything." "Don't worry about us," Gavi said. "You look like you haven't had a good meal in a while, and Jabari and I eat like kings. Plus and he held his palm out to Nirel, would take me into the jungle for another talking to if we didn't feed you well." The huge bird spread his wings just once, and they flashed green in the afternoon sun. "Time to go," Jabari announced, sauntering over to them as Issika put out the fire, and Gavi and Ben washed their hands in the sea. Ibo was washing her face, dipping her hands in the crystalline water, cupping it to splash over her. She was wet from forehead to knees. "Ready," Issika said, standing. Jabari held something out toward her, and as he stood looking at her, she felt her face getting hot. She was still wearing her underclothes after climbing the tree. "Here's something easier for you to wear while we're traveling," he said. "Sorry that I only have boy clothes." He smiled at her, and she saw he had a dimple in one cheek. His hair was tight and curly, cut close to his head. When he turned, she spotted a scar on his back, peeking just over his shirt near the base of his neck. Issika was bursting with questions for him, but she took the clothes without a word and went into the shelter of the jungle to change. Getting in wasn't as easy as Jabari and Gavi had made it look. As she tripped over a vine, she heard him call out. "We'll walk along this way and wait for you in the first clearing," he said. "Iba, go with your sister. I don't have anything small enough for you, but you can wear the little shorts and undershirt you have." Inside the curtain of leaves under the tree she had climbed, Issika looked at what he had given her, Iba drawing close like a curious little tree squirrel. There was a pair of gray pants. Isika put them on and found that they were wide-legged and made of a very soft, light material. She drew the strings tight, tying the pants on. Next, she wriggled into the short-sleeved tunic. It was light brown, with intricate designs along the edges and far too big for her. She could have fit Iba into the shirt with her. Largeness aside, both things were far easier to wear than the heavy skirt and tunic she had been wearing. The clothes were so light and airy that she felt as though she wasn't wearing anything. She walked back and forth, testing them out, and the cloth flapped pleasantly against her skin. "You look nice," Iba pronounced, jumping around like a puppy, arms and legs bare. She seemed completely happy and not disturbed about the changes that were happening to them. They grinned at each other for a minute. Isika quickly redid Iba's braids, twisting and smoothing the stray hairs back in, and fixed her own hair, smoothing her coarse, tight curls, braiding them neatly. She rolled their old clothes up and left them in a bundle at the bottom of the tree. Just before they turned to follow the others, she put a hand on the tree trunk. She felt the humming strength running up and down its branches. "Thank you," she whispered, and they turned to follow the others deeper into the jungle.